Growing concerns over immigration policy are raising questions about who will be able to attend the World Cup and 2028 Summer Games. A sweeping visa crackdown in the United States and rising travel costs are fueling uncertainty over access. Edith Tiansen has more in this report.
The United States is set to host two of the biggest international sporting events, with the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics and this summer's FIFA World Cup.
It's my goal that when the world comes to Los Angeles, they will see the best of our city, not just the stadium, but they will see the culture, the history, and the art embedded into the Coliseum and Exposition Park.
The Los Angeles mayor was asked whether foreign visitors should be concerned about President Donald Trump's immigration policies and ongoing raids by ICE agents.
I think it's very frightening. I think it sends a very scary message to the world.
And how can you assure fans that come to the U.S. for the LA Olympics and for the World Cup that they'll be safe from?
Well, I am sure he is not going to interfere with that, but I do think that message has to come from the White House as well.
Yeah.
They are the ones that need to send that message.
The nationwide immigration crackdown has led to tens of thousands of detentions and widespread protests, including Minneapolis, where 2 U.S. citizens were recently killed during confrontations involving ICE agents. Meanwhile, reports the U.S. might have sent immigration officers to the Winter Olympics in Italy sparked protests on the streets of Milan.
I could tell you unequivocally there are no ICE agents that are part of the Team USA delegation on the ground here in Milan.
And with the FIFA World Cup just months away, the same U.S. Olympic Committee is helping ensure smooth entry into the U.S. for millions of international visitors.
Remember that the FIFA World Cup will also be happening this summer. And so this entire process of welcoming visitors from other countries to the United States for sporting events is getting something of a trial run on a smaller basis, but with still a very extensive worldwide experience. It gives us the opportunity to see how do we optimize this, how do we make it work as well as we possibly can, so that we can apply those lessons to the Olympic Games.
This past week, the United States indefinitely suspended immigrant visas for citizens from 75 countries, on top of full or partial travel restrictions for other previously announced nations. Federal officials say the measures are needed to prevent visa overstays and protect national security. The cost of a U.S. tourist visa has more than doubled this year, now $435, posing another potential barrier for fans. And with the first U.S.-hosted World Cup matches just months away, questions still remain over access and whether international visitors will feel welcome. It is Tianshan, CGTN, Los Angeles.
Later, we'll discuss the controversy surrounding the United States and the World Cup, but we begin with the Olympics. Kate Delaney hosts the radio show and podcast America Tonight with Kate Delaney. And David Goldblatt is a sports historian and author. His book, The Games, A Global History of the Olympics, focuses on the Olympic Games from 1896 to 2016, exploring the impact of politics, economics, and social issues. Thanks to both of you for being with us. David Goldblatt, these games in Italy right now, the Winter Games, have very quickly taken on political overtones. We hear of the protests there, and a number of U.S. athletes are also expressing their frustration with the Trump policies on immigration. As an example, here is the U.S. skier Hunter Hess talking about that. Let's listen.
It brings up mixed emotions to represent the U.S. right now, I think. It's a little hard. There's obviously a lot going on that I'm not the biggest fan of, and I think a lot of people aren't. I think for me, it's more I'm representing my friends and family back home, the people that represent it before me, all the things that I believe are good about the U.S. I just think if it aligns with my moral values, I feel like I'm representing it. Just because I'm wearing the flag doesn't mean I represent everything that's going on in the U.S.
So, David, that was Hunter Hess there speaking, protesting there. These protests are nothing new. I mean, we've seen this goes all the way back to 1936. We think of Jesse Owens. Then, of course, there was the Black Power protest in 1968 and the guerrilla attack on Israeli athletes in 1972 at the Munich Games by Palestinian Black September activists. So what are your thoughts on what is going on right now? Have protests changed over time?
So I think the first thing to say is that while athletes might be making a protest or making a political statement, that the Olympics from its very inception in 1896 has always been a political occasion. The hosts, who spend a great deal of money and expend a great deal of political capital, stage the Olympic Games, are not politically neutral. Forgive my cynicism, but I don't believe that any government, city or national, is prepared to spend the billions and billions of dollars required to stage the Games simply for the love of humanity or sport. Absolutely everybody, every single Olympics has a political agenda and wants to put out a political message. I mean, in 1896, when Athens hosted the first Games, the Greek royal family were probably the main movers behind it, and they were of German descent. And they were most concerned that they should have a way of expressing to the Greek people their essential Greekness rather than Germanness. And no better way could be imagined than staging a recreation of the ancient Games. So from the very beginning, this is always about politics, but there is a profound asymmetry in the way in which we perceive and report on these things. Is that hosts, it's fine, not political, put any message out you like, not a problem, but should athletes speak up, suddenly it becomes a problem. And this is a really profound hypocrisy at the heart of the Olympic movement.
Okay, let me go to Kate Delaney on that very question. Kate, there have been protests against the presence of US immigration agents, ICE agents as they're known, at the Games in Italy. A British-American athlete who's competing under the American flag at the Winter Games had this to say. Let's listen.
You can love the US and be proud to be an American. I am, and still think it can be better and still think that the country can improve. And just because you love the US doesn't mean you stand with this administration and stand behind their policies and their legislation and support the things that they support, because I don't, and I do not support ICE, and I think it's absolutely evil and awful and terrifying.
So, Kate, there we have athletes, you know, at these Games. They have a huge platform at these Games, but how should they navigate activism? Is the Olympics the right place to make their concerns known?
I'll tell you what, I agree with what David said. There is this weird hypocrisy. And yes, because athletes are now a brand. So if you're a brand and you're authentic, that's the buzzword we hear all the time about being authentic, and that's what we're attracted to. And because you're more than just what you do with that performance, so if you're bringing your whole self to the Games and you want to express that you're not happy with something that has made a huge global stink, and that is what happened with 2 Americans being killed, with what's the atrocities of what's happening in Minnesota and what was happening in some other cities. I think absolutely, and clearly the IOC, if you look at some of the rules that they set out, you are allowed to make statements, just not while you are participating at the actual event. So it was, what Hunter did was fine, because you're allowed to express yourself at those press conferences. They couldn't keep a lid on it. And I think athletes just have to navigate what are they comfortable with? Is it authentic? Is it their message? And I think now there's so much outrage. That's what led him to do that. And I think other athletes want to do the same thing, but you can bet that there's agents and people around them that don't want them to invite controversy, because even with Hunter, he had to turn off all of his social media comments because it was so ugly and awful, the things that people were saying under his comment section. So you have to be prepared for the blowback of people that are going to defend what's happening with ICE.
Yeah, and we did see that Olympic officials did draw the line, Kate, when it came to the Ukrainian athlete who had pictures of people who had died in the Ukraine conflict with Russia. And they said they would tolerate his views and his comments outside of the event, but he had these pictures pasted onto his helmet that he was using in an event, and he's been disqualified.
Yeah, because you can't do it during the event itself. I mean, clearly the rules state that, but around it you absolutely can, including, as I mentioned, at the press conference. So you're free to do that, just not while you're participating. And so that's why that happened there.
Right, and David, talking about hypocrisy, Russia's been banned from Olympic events, but we have Israel, which has been accused of committing a genocide against Palestinians by a United Nations panel, is welcomed at these games. I mean, if we look at what happens, Israel is accused of killing 72,000 Palestinians, including women and children. But the IOC says in this instance, athletes cannot be held responsible for the actions of their government. That is a gross double standard, isn't it?
Absolutely. Israel gets a free pass all the time. I mean, this is the case in football, in soccer, as well as the Olympics. I mean, Israel, irrespective of the Gaza issue, should have been banned from FIFA a decade ago. Israel has been systematically flouting FIFA's rules by allowing Israeli teams in the West Bank, which the rest of the world considers to be occupied territory, to continue to play in the Israeli league. This is completely against FIFA's regulations, and were it any other country in the world, they would unquestionably have been banned from international football. So Israel does have a privileged position in the international sporting world. But I think the key thing here is that this is not just down to FIFA or the IOC, this is reflected of the wider international order, in which Israel is consistently given a free pass to do whatever it wants without consequences. So yeah, this is deeply hypocritical.
And David, should not the IOC have taken into consideration that, according to Palestinian officials, more than 800 Palestinian athletes, sportsmen, sportswomen have been killed in this onslaught?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the same with football. You know, the Israelis have been preventing free passage in and out of Gaza for the last decade for sports people. They have made Palestinian participation in international sport virtually impossible. It's a complete outrage. Absolutely. On all of these issues, Israel absolutely should be excluded from international sporting events.
Kate, with the increasing global polarization that we see right now, I mean, is it becoming more and more difficult to sustain these games as something that they proclaim as a shared global experience for the world?
You can bet they're going to manipulate that message that it is a shared experience. And from the point of view from the IOC, and we could really dive into that, I'm sure David has thoughts on that, they're presenting it that way because it's the biggest stage, right? And it's the money, 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 baby, because there's so much sponsorship. There's so many dollars that flow in so many directions. And yes, it costs a fortune for the host country to put it on, but then it's what are they getting back with tourism, with highlighting their areas, all of that. That used to be what the balance was. And you got to think about the audience. I was looking at the ratings the other day for Paris, and it was like 5 billion people in these different platforms paid attention at one point, checking in on what was happening there. That's incredible. That's the biggest sport. I have covered amazing sporting events in my career, and I mean, just huge stages. And in covering the Olympics, it is the biggest.
David, just one other point, and I want to get your views on the World Cup, which will take place this coming summer here, part of which will take place in the United States. The US will host the majority of games, but President Trump has imposed, as we heard from our reporter, visa restrictions on a number of participating countries. And now we hear that foreign fans will have to apply for a visa, and to do that, they will have to show that they have a valid ticket. They will be fast-tracked, we understand, to get their visas, but even then it will take 6 to 8 weeks. Have you ever seen anything like this happen before?
I don't think we've ever had actually quite such restrictive visa regulations on World Cup fans. I mean, in Russia and Qatar, not the most open of societies or with the easiest immigration regimes, your ticket essentially functioned as your visa. for the duration of the tournament. So I think we actually are in new territory that such restrictive visa regulations should be introduced on fans. Though one wonders, you know, given the cost of the tickets, how many people from outside of the United States, frankly, will be able to afford it? I mean, when you're looking at thousands and thousands of dollars to get a ticket, and before you've dealt with your flight or your hotel, or indeed FIFA's special reserved parking zones where you can spend $300 to park your car for a couple of hours before a game, I think there's going to be many fewer foreign fans than we have had in the past, and many more rich Americans in the crowd whose understanding of football and whose experience as a football crowd, I suspect, is rather limited.
Okay, and that is where we have to leave it. David Goldblatt, Kate Delaney, thanks to both of you for being with us. Clamour is growing across Europe to boycott the upcoming FIFA World Cup in the United States as politics, security and access threaten to overshadow the game. International fans already alarmed by sky-high ticket prices, hurdles in securing US visas and expanded surveillance measures by the Trump administration. Joining us is sports commentator Abadi Ismail and football journalist Tim Vickery. Thanks to both of you for being with us. Tim, let me start with you. This World Cup that's going to be held in the United States as well as in Mexico and Canada, but it's really stirring emotions around the world. I mean, if we look at what's happened recently, we had a petition by a prominent Dutch broadcaster for the Netherlands to withdraw from the games. It's attracted 140,000 signatures. In France, we have a member of parliament, Éric Coquerel, who's also called for a boycott, and the veteran French coach, Claude Leroy, says the US does not deserve the prestige of hosting this tournament. Do they have valid points? I mean, there have been protests before. Countries have done things before. But this time, is it different?
I don't think it's different in the case that the World Cup will go ahead. I've absolutely no doubt about that. It's too important to FIFA's budget for changes now. And you mentioned there resistance or opposition growing in Europe, but I don't think there's enough traction around the rest of the world, certainly where I'm based in South America, although there is considerable disquiet about problems of fans going there, there's no talk of a boycott. But to my mind, the battleground is not the World Cup. The battleground is, and I think should be, the Los Angeles Olympics in 2028, with the World Cup as part of that scenario. There are a number of reasons for that, and one is that in the Olympics, everyone, all countries go. There's no qualification process. All countries go. Another is if you want to hurt the United States and make a point, well, the Olympic Games is far, far more important to the sporting culture of the United States than the World Cup is. There are two bones of contention, as I see it. One is the treatment given to fans. Will they all be allowed into the country? Will they be well treated while they are there? Will this heavy-handed immigration police be active on sites there at the World Cup? If that is the case, then I think there is serious grounds for the IOC to have a rethink about 2028. The other one, which I think is particularly controversial, is that although it is very difficult for FIFA to get involved or to judge the internal politics of all of the countries involved, there are certain universal values. And one of those is anti-racism. FIFA is committed to an anti-racist policy. Now, what we saw recently from the social media account of the United States president, that image of former President Obama and his wife depicted as apes. If someone were to behave in this way on the football field, comparing an opponent to an ape, there would be heavy penalties. There would be suspensions and definite consequences. So I think this is a point where FIFA and the international sporting community can clearly use leverage, because the United States government here has clearly committed an infringement to the guidelines, the policies, the ethics of FIFA, and it should be looking to pressure on this point for an apology.
Abadi Ismail, in Britain, there have been more than 24 members of parliament who signed a motion calling on FIFA to ban the US team. That's pretty heavy. 47% of Germans, according to a survey done in Bild newspaper, say Germany should boycott the games if Greenland is invaded. And even the former FIFA president, Sepp Blatter, a man who's had some acquaintance with controversy himself, says that he backs a fan boycott of the US games.
Well, the FIFA for the longest, they've had their principles. Football and politics, they should be separated. But when we look at the past and when we look at the present, this principle hasn't been respected. And to your point, when we talked at the officials of the FIFA back in time, they were charged for corruption, for siding with political figures during the World Cup in Qatar. That's why they were charged for these corruption. Fast forward, we look at Infantino's. And if you look at Infantino's and what he has been doing ever since the inauguration ceremony of President Donald J. Trump, he has been at the inauguration ceremony and every major event of the US government. And so, like I said, the principles of the FIFA hasn't been respected in the past or in the current time. And the greatest example of this is the Peace FIFA Award that was manufactured for the President of the United States. Fast forward, we're talking about the mainstream media and the digital media. Figures from federations, politicians, activists, grassroots organizations have been calling for boycott. It's a symbolic work in order to raise awareness and criticism of the work that what's happening internally in the US. We're talking about the travel ban, the difficulties to get visas, the expensive price of visas, the delays of visas. And once you make it to the US, we're talking about long wait, long delays at major airports, LAX, JFKs, and all of these major airports. People are coming here. The message that this government is sending to everybody, you are not welcomed. And so in the short terms, when we're looking at all of these variables, we are really not sending the message for inclusion, what the FIFA is trying to do, bring people together. It's not the message. We are excluding people.
Yeah. Why is the World Cup being held in the United States? This is not a country that's known for football, or soccer as it's called here. I mean, basketball and American football are much bigger things. Why is it being held here?
You can make the case, and arguably the United States has a great influence on the FIFA to host or co-host the World Cup alongside with our neighbors, Canada and Mexico, that haven't been treated fairly and respectively in both nations and on the political scheme of things. Now, when we talk sports, this is the first and foremost, the most games or matches that have ever been held by FIFA. We're talking about 107 games. And so when we look at the landscape and the magnitude of the games, who has the infrastructure, who has the hospitality infrastructure, the stadiums, the logistics, the transportation, the aviation? It is right here at the United States of America, alongside with the Canadians and the Mexicans. And so it makes sense from a global stage that is ready to host such an event of this scale. But when we impose travel bans, when we make such a case with ICE, immigrations, and the rhetoric that just what we mentioned about this government, it is not, we're not sending a good message. I have so many people that are asking me, how do you feel being American living around ICE and the immigration and the border control? Do you feel threatened?
Yeah.
And so we're talking as a citizen, we feel threatened. So when you think about these foreigners that are coming with foreign money, investing it in our shoreline, okay? This is a big deal. We're talking about jobs. We're talking about economy. We're talking about foreign money coming to our homeland.
Okay. Tim, you know, this is not just focused on the Olympics or the World Cup, and we just had the case of Pep Guardiola, the Manchester City coach, who has spoken out pretty forcefully about what Israel is doing in Gaza. He was reprimanded by the Manchester Jewish Council for his comments. They said he should stick to football, not make comments about what's going on in Gaza. But what do you make of that? I mean, should prominent sports figures use their platform to make their views known?
I don't see why not. I think we always want debate, and people are entitled to their opinion. As I say, there are certain lines that should not be crossed, and one of those was the racism line crossed by the President of the United States, which needs an apology. These issues are always difficult for FIFA to negotiate. The issue of football taking place in occupied territories by Israeli settlers is one that FIFA have been trying to kick down the road for some considerable time now. And you can understand why they want to play past the parcel when they can hear it ticking. It's always difficult for FIFA to include the entire world, or the IOC to include the entire world in this. But getting back to these mega events, as your excellent correspondent has said, when the United States agrees to host these mega events, be it the World Cup or be it the Olympic Games, it is signing a contract with the rest of the world saying, you are welcome. If that contract is broken in the course of the World Cup, then I think the international sports movement and certainly the IOC should think seriously about the Olympic Games in 2028.
Well, people should speak their minds, and that's their stage. Pep Guardiola is just an example, and as we come closer to the World Cup, people are going to talk and speak their minds. They will know who's the oppressed and who's the oppressor in the discussion of Gaza and the Palestinian rights. And this is the first World Cup that has more than 6-7 Arab nations participating in this World Cup, and everyone coming with a heavy heart. And I'm not speaking about the Muslim nations. I'm talking about every human being have dignity and have seen the World Cup.
I've just got a few seconds left about it. I want to ask you about the fact that ICE, we are told, will play a key role in policing the World Cup here in the United States. That's according to a report in the New York Times. I mean, this is ICE. Very controversial group of people. They've killed 2 U.S. citizens in the past few weeks. What is the message that sends?
The message is clear. You're not welcome. And when we look at ICE at every stadium gates, checking out everyone's ID, that's threatening. And quite honestly, it's residual between ICE, ticket prices, exponential price tags for families of normal, average family, and average person, they will walk away from the game. I would rather watch it on televised TV.
And that's where we have to leave it. Abadi Ismail, Tim Vickery, thanks to both of you for being with us. And that is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington.